Hello, my beautiful people. So I did a different video, and it was great. It was off the cuff, but I pronounced the guy's name wrong, and I don't want to get him wrong, because he was part of the Mafia, so I want to make sure I get his name right. So, today's topic is all about how do you leave things, how do you walk away. There's a short story that I've talked about before on the channel, because I've talked about this topic before, called Those Who Walk Away from Omelos. By Ursula Le Guin. It's a great short story. I will link it below. You should read it. But it's coming up out of my previous video, which I talked about traditions and rituals. How do you actually walk away from stuff? How do you walk away from practices or belief systems or the Amish or the mob? How do you walk away? How do you pick up everything you own and get in a Conestoga wagon and head out west to the unknown? I have no idea how people do that. But people do it. People walk away all the time. Why do they walk away? Well, they walk away because they want new opportunities, right? Why did people come here and immigrate to the U.S. in the early 1900s? Because they were promised opportunities, and people flocked here from places like Italy and Ireland and England and Germany, right? And New York was made up of these huge sections of cultures, and they're all fascinating. Really, they're all fascinating. But probably, the most notorious are the Italian families that came and then formed the Mafia. The Germans came, the Amish came to avoid persecution for religious beliefs. People went westward because they wanted gold. They wanted, they wanted to explore the unknown. We wanted to reinvent Adam and Eve, whatever reasons people leave things, it's important to know. So I got a question a few weeks ago, and I've been asked this before, and I've done videos about this before, but I have more to say now because I've looked at other people's stories about leaving the church and how hard that was for me. And I have to say it wasn't hard because, I as I mentioned before, if you've watched the videos, probably a year ago that I did it. But basically, if you're new to the channel, I was going to be a nun. I was very religious, very into the church. I ran a youth camp. I ran a youth group. I was very into church and go all the time. And then one day, our priest said, I think when communion comes, we're going to tell everybody that they should leave because they aren't, confirmed into the faith. And therefore, this is a supper for believers. And I was like, wait a second, that is exactly what Jesus did not teach. Jesus was like, hey, you leper, here. Hey, you person who is poor and has nothing, you come here. I have loaves, I have fishes. Come here. Come sit with me. Let's all break bread together. He wasn't about like you have to leave because you don't believe in me or you don't believe in my God. He was all about light and love. So I think at that moment, it broke my spirit. And I was in my 30s when that happened, maybe my early 40s. And at first, I kind of chalked it up to laziness. I hated getting up on Sunday mornings to begin with. I did it because I taught Sunday school and I had to be there. But I was like, at first I thought that must be the reason I just don't want. But then I realized that, like, something in me had that light had gone out of organized religion. Because the organizers are going away from what it is they're supposed to be doing. So I'm okay with it. The hardest part is the relationships. I miss the people that I used to be friends with. I miss, having a place to go every Wednesday, having a place to go every Sunday, having the dinners afterwards and doing volunteer work with the church and, all the different things. And you miss the people and the activities and the ceremonies and all the things, but at the end of the day, what I don't miss is the drama and the politics and the bullshit. That's what I don't miss. So lately, as I've been sitting here with my son as he's recovering, I've been watching lots of these like mini Western videos that are on, because I'm sorry, ladies, I can only watch witchy stuff so much. I need other stuff to occupy my mind, and I'm fascinated with the Wild West stories. So they have these mini award-winning mini movies about the Westerns, and I watch that, and and there's all this stuff, and I think, oh, that's interesting. And then somehow, because I watched that, then there was a video about this guy who left the mob, and it was fascinating to me because he's a young guy, he's my age, so I mean, I guess I'm not young, but he's a young guy, and and he was a made man, which I'm very interested in the Mafia as far as the families are concerned at the turn of the century when, all the different cultural groups came to New York, because we said, come here, come here, come here, come work in our factories. Then we treated everybody like garbage and didn't pay them anything, and then they died in sweatshops and fires. But the Italian families were like, no, we're going to organize, and we're not going to let people treat us like garbage. They're not going to do to us what they're doing to the Irish, and like stuck together. So mad respect for, for the Italian spirit. I have a little bit of Italian in my DNA, just a tiny, tiny bit, but clearly that's where I get my talking from with my hands from. Anyway, so this video, I thought, well, that's pretty interesting. So there was an interview with him, and he doesn't seem to do a lot of interviews. But basically, the long and short of it, and I'm going to link him below, is that he was not from a mafia family, and then he somehow got tied up with the mafia, and then he went to prison for manslaughter, which was not related to the mafia, and then he got out, and then he got involved with the mafia again, or he tried to stay away from it, but then he got back into it. Then he became a made man, which is like, I don't know, like a secret, like, I don't know, it's like when you become a mason, right? There's like a ceremony, and it's, it's a big deal. And but then, like, once you become a made man, like, you are part of the family and you cannot leave it. And then things were going okay, but then they accused him, without accusing him, of being an informant. And he wasn't an informant. But they started like surveilling his house, and he, because he was part of the system, knew like that was step one. Like they were getting ready to, unearth him. So he was like, I'm not gonna put up with that. Like, and I felt like watching in and he, like I said, he doesn't do a lot of interviews, but in the interviews that I watched, you can see the hurt in him. Like, this was my family, and they accused me, who, like, I'm a person who really believes in the true, I don't want to mispronounce any of the words, like, of the Borgata, like, the family, like, I don't want to mispronounce those words, but, like, he really believed in the spirit of the mafia as it's supposed to be, and the new mafia is all about greed and money, and you can see the hurt. Like, they accused me, and I would never do that, because if I was guilty of the things they accused me of, I deserve to be shot. I deserve to be called a rat. But I didn't do those things. And then eventually, when the manifest came out that has all the people that they were going to bring in to testify in this case that they thought he had been a rat on, and it didn't have his name on it, they were like, oh crap, we made a mistake. But by that time, he had tried to leave the mafia, to walk away, to be put on a shelf, and just say, listen, I just don't want any part of it. I'll go my way, you go your way, and, now you know that I wasn't an informant, but I'll just walk away. But, that's not how it works, I guess. So they were after him. So he feared for his life, he feared for his family's life, and so he just walked into the FBI, I guess, and said, what do you want to know? And it's interesting because one of the things I learned in the interview is that anything he admitted to doing as part of his life in the mob, he got arrested for those things. Like, they charged him for those things. Like, if he said, like, he didn't say, he wasn't specific, but he said I stole something, he would get charged for stealing because he admitted it. So that helped him later on, because he's probably one of the only mob witnesses they've ever had that wasn't actually, like, giving them information to cut a deal. Like, he walked in. It wasn't like he was being looked for or anything. It wasn't like he was trying to get out of something. Like, he gave the information, but in exchange for protection for him and his family. And it's recent, too. Like, this is recent. This isn't in, like, 1920. This is recent. That story, coupled with this woman, Mary Byler, who I'm going to also link below. Sorry for all the noise in my life. My house is just noise constantly. I've been trying to do this video like all freaking day. But I can't do it during work because people watch the clock. Anyway, so Mary Byler, and I've talked about her on the channel, like, she left the Amish community because of sexual abuse. Her brothers were sexually abusing her, and there's no accountability for boys in the Amish church. And her mother turned a blind eye. The pastors, or whatever they're called, the bishops or whatever, turned a blind eye, and it turned out that the bishop was also abusing girls. And the blame was always put on the girls, even though it was the boys who would like literally like lock like in the outhouse, like do awful, unspeakable things to girls. And again, modern, not 25 years ago. This is like recent. So, she took the church down. Like she left the Amish and then she filed charges, and people went to jail, and she's excommunicated. He's excommunicated. She's excommunicated from the Amish. He's excommunicated from the Mafia. He called it being put on a shelf. I don't know the lingo, so whatever. And she can't ever see her friends again. He can't ever see his friends again. I mean, for me, leaving the church was nothing like that. Not dramatic. I'm still friends with most of the people that I was friends with. Admittedly, over time, those relationships have grown apart because we're in different spaces. They all think I'm a little loopy. They're always trying to get me back in the fold. I don't know that that's going to happen. But I think leaving is always difficult. Whatever it is you're leaving from, whatever it is you're walking away from. It's hard to walk away from people that you love. It's hard to walk away from, things that bring you comfort. I imagine for John, like he can't go to a whole lot of restaurants he likes. I imagine for Mary, like, all of her childhood friends, like they're not allowed to talk to her. Like they'll be shunned if they talk to her. Like, just there's a lot of risk in leaving. But what is the risk in staying? That's the bigger thing. For John, it was going to be to be on Earth. For Mary, it was going to be continually being abused. Like for me, what would have been the worst thing if I would have stayed? I would have just been apathetic and carrying out the motions of being religious for the sake of being religious. And so that wouldn't sit right with me with spirit. Yes, I miss it, but I mean, I also moved, so that helped, and I live in a new space and I do new things. I had pulled a rune in the previous video, and it was Nauthiz, so Hestia was for you. But really, that is the spirit of leaving something. You don't want to go through it. You don't want to leave a person. You don't want to leave a group. You don't want to leave things that are comfortable to you. Depending on your situation, if it's as dramatic as Mary and John, your whole life is uprooted. It wasn't the case for me, but it is the case for many. And so if you're in the situation where you have to walk away from something, know that it's going to be okay, because there's a risk in leaving. There's a lot of risks in leaving. But what is the risk if you stay? What is that risk? So I know somebody out there has to hear it. It's okay. Pull the thorn out. Keep on moving. Just keep marching forward, and be careful. Be safe. I think for both, Mary's life wasn't at risk, right? Because there isn't like maybe there is a mafia mob for the Amish. There's a show about that, but I don't think anybody was coming after her in that way. But their abuse was purely emotional abuse after she left. And then, but for John, like, he still is at risk. Because like I said, these two are contemporary stories. This isn't 50 years ago. This is the last 5-10 years. So anyway, I am wishing you all the very best in light and love. Be well. Take care. Bye-bye.